I always thought our life in Oakwood was pretty close to perfect. Our cozy two-story house with its neatly trimmed lawn was a symbol of the love Laura and I had built over 15 years of marriage. I'm Michael, a 42-year-old software engineer, and my wife Laura, 38, is a fitness instructor with a magnetic personality. We didn't have kids, which allowed us the freedom to indulge in spontaneous getaways and passionate evenings together. Our friends envied our seemingly perfect life, often commenting on how lucky we were to have found each other. I've always been a devoted husband, surprising Laura with little gestures of love, a bouquet of her favorite lilies, handwritten notes, or a surprise weekend trip. I worked hard to balance my demanding job with quality time for Laura, believing our love to be unshakable. She was the more outgoing of the two of us, effortlessly charming everyone around her. I admired her from afar during gatherings, content in the knowledge that she was mine, and I was hers. Our home was a reflection of our hard work and shared dreams. It was a place filled with laughter, love, and memories. Dinners at trendy restaurants, vacations in picturesque locales, and a close-knit circle of friends who often praised our relationship were the norm. I believed we had it all. But in Oakwood, where everyone knew each other's business, I was blissfully unaware of the cracks forming beneath the surface of our idyllic life. I had no idea that our tranquil facade was about to shatter, revealing a reality I never could have imagined. It all started with subtle changes in Laura's behavior. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was always busy, always in demand at the gym where she worked. She'd come home later than usual, explaining she'd had to cover a class for a colleague or stayed late to help a new client. I trusted her completely, so I accepted her explanations without question. But then, the late nights became more frequent. She started to get dressed up more often, even when she claimed she was just going to run errands or meet a friend for coffee. Her phone, once casually left lying around, was now always with her, and she'd become almost secretive about it, guarding it with a fervor I'd never seen before. One night, as we were sitting down to dinner, I noticed her phone light up with a message. She glanced at it quickly, and then flipped it over, face down on the table. "Who was that?" I asked casually, trying not to sound accusatory. "Just a friend," she replied too quickly, her eyes not meeting mine. "Nothing important." Her evasiveness planted the first seed of doubt in my mind. It wasn't like her to hide things from me. We'd always been open and honest with each other, or so I thought. A few weeks later, I came home early from work hoping to surprise her. I found her in the bedroom talking on the phone. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear her laughing softly, a tone she hadn't used with me in a long time. "I can't wait to see you again," she said, her voice filled with an unfamiliar warmth. My heart dropped. Who was she talking to? Why did she sound so affectionate? When she realized I was home, she quickly ended the call, a guilty look flashing across her face. "Oh, hey, I didn't hear you come in," she said, trying to act nonchalant. "Just catching up with an old friend." "Which friend?" I asked, unable to hide the suspicion in my voice. "Just someone from the gym," she replied, too quickly again. "You don't know him." "Him." The word echoed in my mind, amplifying my doubts. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it lingered, gnawing at me. Her behavior continued to change. She was more distant, often lost in her thoughts, and our conversations became shorter and less meaningful. The intimacy we once shared was slowly eroding, replaced by a growing chasm of silence and secrecy. One night, after she had fallen asleep, I couldn't resist the urge to check her phone. I knew it was wrong, a breach of her privacy, but the nagging doubts had become too much to bear. I found it on her bedside table, unlocked and glowing softly in the dark. My hands trembled as I scrolled through her messages, my heart pounding in my chest. Most of the texts were innocuous, from friends and family. But then I saw a thread with someone named Adam. The messages were innocuous at first, talking about workouts and gym schedules. But as I scrolled further back, the tone changed. There were inside jokes, late-night confessions, and plans to meet up. My blood ran cold when I saw the pictures. Selfies of them together, too close, too familiar. One message stood out. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing. Love, Adam." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The ground beneath me seemed to shift, and I had to steady myself against the nightstand. This wasn't just a harmless friendship. This was something more, something deeper, and it was tearing our marriage apart. I put the phone back where I found it and lay down beside Laura, my mind racing. I knew I had to confront her, to get to the bottom of this. But how? What if I was wrong? What if I was overreacting? Sleep eluded me that night as I lay there staring at the ceiling, my mind a whirlwind of doubts and fears. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone else, was hiding something from me. And I was determined to find out what it was. The days following my discovery were a blur of anger, confusion, and gut-wrenching anxiety. I tried to act normal, but it was like walking through a minefield. Every smile, every touch from Laura felt like a lie, and I couldn't shake the images and messages I'd seen. I knew I couldn't confront her without solid evidence, something irrefutable that she couldn't explain away or deny. One evening, after Laura had left for one of her supposed late-night gym sessions, I decided to follow her. It felt like an act of betrayal, but the gnawing suspicion left me no choice. I waited until she pulled out of the driveway, then I got into my car and followed at a safe distance, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. She drove across town, not towards the gym, but to a small upscale restaurant. I parked a few blocks away and watched as she walked inside, her demeanor relaxed and confident. After a few minutes, a man joined her, tall, athletic, and unmistakably the Adam from her messages. My stomach churned as I watched them through the restaurant's window. They laughed, touched hands across the table, and leaned in close, lost in their own world. It was as if I was witnessing a scene from someone else's life, not my own. The betrayal felt like a physical pain, sharp and unrelenting. I snapped a few pictures with my phone, needing concrete evidence. The final blow came when they stood to leave. Laura kissed him, long and passionate, right there on the sidewalk. There was no mistaking the intimacy between them. It wasn't just a fling, it was a full-blown affair. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. By the time Laura returned, my resolve had hardened. I needed to confront her, to make her face the truth she had been hiding. When she walked through the door, she was all smiles, acting as if nothing was wrong. "Hey, honey," she said, leaning in for a kiss. I pulled back, my eyes boring into hers. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cold and steady. Her smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. "About what?" she asked, trying to maintain her composure. "About Adam," I replied, watching her reaction closely. Her face went pale, and she took a step back. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice wavered. "Stop lying, Laura. I know everything," I said, pulling out my phone and showing her the pictures. Her eyes widened in shock, and she stumbled back, speechless. For a moment, we stood there in silence, the weight of the truth hanging between us. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry, Michael." "Sorry?" I exploded, unable to contain my anger any longer. "You're sorry? For how long, Laura? How long have you been lying to me?" She sank into a chair, tears streaming down her face. "It started a few months ago," she admitted. "I never meant for it to go this far. I was lonely, and Adam, he made me feel wanted." "Lonely?" I repeated, incredulous. "I was here, Laura. I was always here. How could you do this to us?" "I don't know," she sobbed. "I was stupid. I made a mistake. Please, Michael, you have to believe me. I never stopped loving you." Her words rang hollow, the betrayal too deep to be soothed by apologies. "You expect me to believe that after everything?" I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "You destroyed our marriage, Laura. How can we ever come back from this?" She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "I'll do anything, Michael. I'll end it with Adam. I'll go to counseling. Just, please don't leave me." Her desperation was palpable, but my heart was too broken to care. "I need time to think," I said, turning away from her. "I can't just pretend this didn't happen." As I walked out of the room, I could hear her sobbing behind me. The woman I had loved for 15 years was a stranger now, and the life we had built together lay in ruins. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. The days following the discovery were a torment. I could barely function at work, my mind constantly replaying the scenes of Laura with Adam. Her apologies and pleas for forgiveness echoed in my head, but they did little to ease the pain. I needed answers, and I needed to confront her again, to understand how our life had unraveled so completely. One evening, I decided it was time. I found Laura in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. The tension in the air was thick, and I could see the fear in her eyes as I approached. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but laced with anger. "No more lies, Laura. I need to know everything." She nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "I understand. I'll tell you everything." We sat down and she began to speak, her voice trembling. "It started about 6 months ago. I met Adam at the gym. He was a new member, and we just clicked. At first, it was innocent, just talking, sharing stories. But then it became more. He made me feel alive, Michael, in a way I hadn't felt in years." I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my composure. "So you decided to throw away our marriage for a fling?" "It wasn't just a fling," she said, her voice rising. "It was more than that. I was lonely, Michael. You were always so busy with work, and I felt invisible." "Invisible?" I repeated, incredulous. "I did everything for you, Laura. I worked hard to provide for us, to give us a good life. How could you feel invisible? You were physically here, but emotionally, you were distant," she shot back. "I needed more than just financial security. I needed you to be present, to care about me." I felt a surge of anger. "So instead of talking to me, you turned to him. You betrayed me, Laura. You betrayed us." "I know," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I was weak, and I made terrible choices." I took a deep breath, trying to process her words. "And Adam? What does he mean to you?" She shook her head. "He's nothing now. I've ended it. I told him it was a mistake, and that I couldn't see him anymore." "How can I believe you?" I asked, my voice raw with emotion. "How can I trust anything you say?" "I'll do anything to prove it to you," she pleaded. "I'll go to counseling. I'll cut off all contact with him. Just please, give me a chance to make things right." Her desperation was palpable, but my heart was too shattered to offer immediate forgiveness. "This isn't something that can be fixed overnight," I said, my voice firm. "You've destroyed the trust between us, and that's not something that can be easily rebuilt." "I know," she whispered, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I love you, Michael. I always have." Her words hung in the air, but they felt hollow, overshadowed by the betrayal that had tainted our relationship. "I need time," I said finally. "Time to think, time to process everything. I can't just pretend this didn't happen." Laura nodded, her eyes filled with sadness. "I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, waiting, and hoping that we can find a way through this." I stood up, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. As I walked away, I could feel her eyes on me, filled with regret and sorrow. The woman I had loved for 15 years was now a stranger, and the life we had built together was in tatters. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. Forgiveness, if it ever came, would be a long and difficult journey. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal, and a desperate need for some semblance of control. Laura's pleas for forgiveness and her promises to change felt empty, unable to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. I couldn't shake the images of her and Adam, the betrayal playing on a loop in my mind. Each day was a struggle to keep my emotions in check, to function normally at work, and to maintain a facade of stability. But inside, I was unraveling. One evening, as I sat alone in our dimly lit living room, a thought crept into my mind: revenge. It wasn't a concept I had ever entertained seriously before, but now it seemed like the only way to regain some sense of power and justice. Laura had shattered our life, and she needed to feel the weight of her actions. And Adam, he needed to understand the consequences of meddling in another man's marriage. I started to form a plan, one that would hit both of them where it hurt. My first step was to gather more information about Adam. I knew where he worked and frequented, thanks to the messages I had seen on Laura's phone. I decided to dig deeper, finding out everything I could about him: his habits, his weaknesses, and any potential secrets he might be hiding. One night, I followed Adam after he left the gym. It wasn't difficult. He seemed oblivious to being watched. He went to a local bar, a place I had never been but had heard of. I parked my car a block away and watched as he entered. I waited for a few minutes, then walked in, scanning the room until I saw him sitting at the bar nursing a drink. I took a seat at a table in the corner, keeping my eyes on him. He was talking to the bartender, a woman who seemed to know him well. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see the familiarity in their interactions. They laughed and she leaned in close, clearly more than just a casual acquaintance. An idea began to form in my mind. If I could get closer to Adam, maybe I could find a way to expose his true character. To Laura, to his friends, to anyone who might care. I needed to find a way to break him, just as he had broken my marriage. Over the next few weeks, I frequented the bar, gradually building a rapport with the bartender whose name was Karen. She was friendly and easy to talk to, and it didn't take long for me to steer our conversations toward Adam. Adam's a regular here, isn't he? I asked, casually one evening, nursing my drink. Karen nodded, a hint of amusement in her eyes. Yeah, he is. Thinks he's a real ladies' man. I forced a laugh. Is that so? Has he ever mentioned a woman named Laura? Karen's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Laura? Yeah, he's mentioned her a few times. Why do you ask? I leaned in, lowering my voice. Let's just say I've got some history with her. She's my wife. Karen's eyes widened in surprise. No way, that's complicated. You could say that, I replied, trying to keep my tone light despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. I'm just trying to understand what's been going on. Karen hesitated for a moment, then sighed. Look, I shouldn't be telling you this, but Adam isn't exactly the most trustworthy guy. He's been seeing Laura for a while, but he's also been messing around with other women. He's a player. Always has been. Her words were like fuel to the fire burning inside me. Adam wasn't just a homewrecker. He was a serial cheater. The idea of Laura being one of his conquests made my blood boil. But it also gave me an idea. If I could expose his true nature to Laura, maybe she would finally see him for what he really was. With Karen's help, I began to gather evidence of Adam's infidelities. She discreetly took photos of him flirting with other women at the bar, and I managed to get a few recordings of his conversations, where he bragged about his conquests. It wasn't long before I had a solid collection of damning evidence. One evening, after another tense and silent dinner with Laura, I decided it was time to confront her with what I had found. I walked into the living room, where she was sitting with her phone, looking as if she was trying to find the courage to talk to me. Laura, I said, my voice firm. We need to talk. She looked up, her eyes wary. What is it, Michael? I took a deep breath, then handed her a folder containing the photos and recordings. This is Adam, the real Adam. I thought you should know who you've been involved with. She opened the folder, her face going pale as she flipped through the contents. What? What is this? It's the truth, Laura. He's been playing you, just like he's been playing everyone else. He never cared about you. He's a serial cheater, and you were just another one of his flings. Tears welled up in her eyes as she absorbed the information. I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said, my voice softening slightly. But now you do, and now you need to decide what you're going to do about it. She looked up at me, her expression a mix of guilt and pain. Michael, I'm so sorry. I was stupid and blind. Can we try to fix this? I didn't answer immediately. The anger and hurt were still there, but seeing her finally realize the truth about Adam gave me a small sense of satisfaction. It's not going to be easy, I said finally. Trust doesn't just come back overnight. We need to take it one step at a time, and you need to prove to me that you're serious about making things right. I will, she promised, her voice trembling. I'll do whatever it takes. The journey to rebuild our marriage would be long and fraught with challenges. But for the first time since the betrayal, I felt a glimmer of hope. Laura had seen the true face of the man she had risked everything for. And now it was up to her to show me that she was willing to fight for us. As for Adam, he would get what was coming to him. I had made sure of that. In the weeks that followed, Laura made a genuine effort to rebuild our relationship. She cut off all contact with Adam and started going to counseling sessions. She was more attentive, more present, and for a brief moment, It felt like we might actually have a chance at salvaging what was left of our marriage. But despite her efforts, the wound was still raw, and trust remained elusive. One evening, after a particularly intense counseling session, Laura and I sat in the living room, the air heavy with unspoken words. She reached for my hand, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. "Michael, I know I've hurt you deeply, and I'm trying my best to make things right. But I need to know, do you think we can ever truly move past this?" she asked, her voice trembling. I looked at her, the woman I had loved for 15 years, and felt a pang of sorrow. "Laura, I appreciate everything you're doing, but this isn't something that can be fixed easily. The trust we had is gone, and I'm not sure it will ever come back." Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded, seemingly accepting my words. "I understand. I just wish I could turn back time and undo everything. I was so stupid." "We can't change the past," I said gently. "All we can do is decide how to move forward." She squeezed my hand, her grip desperate. "I want to move forward with you, Michael. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life making up for my mistakes." I sighed, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. "I know you do, Laura, but I need time. I need space to figure out if I can truly forgive and forget." Her expression crumpled, and she began to sob. "Please, Michael. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me." I felt a surge of anger mixed with pity. "Laura, this isn't just about you anymore. I have to think about what's best for me too. And right now, I don't know if staying together is the right thing for either of us." The room fell silent, except for her quiet sobs. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay, but I couldn't lie to her, or to myself. The next morning, I woke up to find Laura already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She looked up at me as I entered the room, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. "Michael," she began, her voice hoarse, "I've been thinking about what you said last night, and I realize that maybe I'm not the only one who needs to make amends. Maybe we both need some time apart to heal." I nodded slowly. "I think you're right. We've been through a lot, and maybe some distance will help us gain perspective." We spent the rest of the morning discussing the practicalities of a separation. It was a painful conversation, but there was also a sense of relief in finally acknowledging the truth. By the end of the day, we had agreed that I would move out for a while, giving us both the space we needed. As I packed my bags, Laura stood in the doorway, watching silently. When I was ready to leave, she walked me to the door, her eyes filled with tears. "I hope this isn't goodbye forever," she said softly. "I hope so too," I replied, my voice cracking. "Take care of yourself, Laura." With a heavy heart, I walked out the door, leaving behind the home we had built together. As I drove away, I couldn't help but feel a mix of sadness and uncertainty about the future. But I knew that this was the right step, the first step towards healing. In the weeks that followed, Laura and I kept in touch sporadically. We both focused on our individual healing, attending counseling sessions, and trying to rediscover who we were outside of our marriage. It was a difficult and lonely journey, but it was also necessary. One evening, a few months into our separation, Laura called me. Her voice was calm, yet there was a hint of something else. Resignation, perhaps. "Michael, I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, "and I realized that maybe the best way for us to move forward is to let go." My heart sank, but I knew she was right. "I think so too, Laura. We've both grown and changed so much. Maybe it's time to accept that our paths are no longer the same." She sighed, a sound filled with both relief and sorrow. "I agree. Let's make this as amicable as possible. We owe it to each other after everything we've been through." "Agreed," I said, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. "Thank you, Laura, for everything. I truly wish you the best." "You too, Michael," she replied, her voice breaking slightly. "Take care." And with that, we ended the call. It was the final step in a long and painful journey. But it was also a new beginning. I knew that healing would take time. But for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future. It was time to close this chapter of my life and start writing a new one. When Laura and I made the mutual decision to let go of our marriage, The next step was to formalize our separation through divorce. We both agreed to keep things as amicable as possible, but I knew that navigating the legal process would still be challenging. I reached out to my lawyer, Mr. Davis, to discuss the next steps. He was supportive and reassuring, emphasizing the importance of maintaining a calm and cooperative approach to ensure a fair outcome. Laura also hired a lawyer, and soon we were sitting across from each other in a sterile conference room, our legal representatives by our sides. The first few meetings were tense, filled with legal jargon and discussions about dividing our assets. Laura and I had accumulated a lot over the years: a house, savings, investments, and personal belongings. We both wanted to ensure a fair division, but it was clear that the process would be emotionally draining. As we worked through the details, memories of our life together kept surfacing, making it hard to stay focused. Each piece of property we discussed, each financial document we reviewed, felt like a piece of our shared history being dissected and parceled out. It was painful, but necessary. One of the most contentious issues was our house. It had been our home for so long, filled with memories both good and bad. Laura wanted to keep it, hoping to maintain some semblance of stability in her life. I understood her attachment to the house, but I also knew that holding on to it would be a constant reminder of our failed marriage. After much discussion, we agreed that she would keep the house, and I would take a larger share of our savings and investments. Our lawyers helped us navigate the process, mediating when emotions ran high, and ensuring that we both understood the legal implications of our decisions. Despite the underlying tension, there were moments of cooperation and mutual respect. We both wanted to move on with our lives without harboring resentment or anger. Finally, the day of the court hearing arrived. It was a cold, gray morning, and as I stood outside the courthouse, I couldn't help but feel a sense of finality. This was it, the end of a chapter that had defined my life for 15 years. Laura arrived shortly after, looking somber but composed. We exchanged a brief, bittersweet smile before heading inside. The hearing itself was relatively straightforward. Our lawyers presented our agreed-upon terms to the judge, who reviewed the documents and asked a few clarifying questions. Laura and I both affirmed our desire to proceed with the divorce, and after what felt like an eternity, the judge nodded and signed off on the agreement. "Your divorce is granted," the judge said, his voice echoing in the quiet courtroom. "I wish you both the best as you move forward." As we left the courthouse, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. The legal aspect of our separation was over, but the emotional journey was far from finished. Laura and I stood outside for a moment, the cold air biting at our faces. "I guess this is it," Laura said softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Yeah," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "Take care of yourself, Laura." "You too, Michael," she whispered, before turning and walking away. I watched her go, feeling the weight of our shared history settle heavily on my shoulders. But as I walked to my car, a sense of closure began to take hold. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew I had made the right decision. It was time to focus on healing and rebuilding my life. In the weeks following the finalization of our divorce, I threw myself into work and personal projects. I reconnected with old friends, took up new hobbies, and even started attending a support group for people going through similar experiences. Slowly, I began to rediscover myself and find joy in the small things. Laura and I maintained a cordial relationship, occasionally checking in on each other. It wasn't easy, but we both knew that moving forward required letting go of the past. I found solace in the support of my friends and family, who reminded me that life goes on and that brighter days were ahead. The journey of healing was long and filled with ups and downs, but with each passing day, I grew stronger. I learned to embrace the uncertainty of the future and to find peace in the present moment. And as I looked forward to the new chapter of my life, I felt a sense of hope and resilience that I hadn't felt in years. The trial had marked the end of one story, but it was also the beginning of another, a story of personal growth, rediscovery, and the promise of new beginnings. In the aftermath of the legal proceedings, my life underwent a significant transformation characterized by a renewed focus on personal growth and self-discovery. The dissolution of my marriage had been a profound upheaval, yet it also presented an opportunity to reconstruct my life on my own terms. The absence of the once pervasive tension allowed me to channel my energies into pursuits that had long been neglected. Professional endeavors took precedence in this new phase. Immersing myself in work provided a dual benefit. It occupied my mind and also facilitated career advancement. The additional responsibilities and projects I undertook not only bolstered my professional standing, but also reaffirmed my capabilities. The meticulous nature of software engineering, with its demand for precision and problem-solving, offered a therapeutic outlet for my turbulent emotions. Simultaneously, I revisited old hobbies and explored new interests, establishing a balanced routine that incorporated both intellectual and physical activities. The physicality of hiking and the creative demands of photography became integral components of my daily life. These activities served as conduits for both mental relaxation and physical fitness, further aiding in my holistic recovery. The support system comprising friends and family played an indispensable role during this period. Regular interactions with them provided emotional stability and a sense of continuity amidst the changes. My friends, who had witnessed my journey from the outset, offered perspectives that were both grounding and insightful. Their unwavering support was a reminder of the resilience inherent in human connections. The decision to attend a support group was particularly instrumental in my healing process. Sharing experiences with individuals who had faced similar tribulations fostered a sense of community and mutual understanding. These interactions underscored the universality of pain and the collective strength derived from shared experiences. The group discussions, guided by a skilled facilitator, often delved into the complexities of trust, forgiveness, and self-worth, providing a comprehensive framework for emotional recovery. As time progressed, I began to explore the possibility of new relationships. The prospect of dating was initially daunting, given the emotional scars and the significant shift in my personal circumstances. However, with encouragement from my support network and a gradually rebuilt self-confidence, I ventured into this realm with cautious optimism. These experiences, while varied, underscored the importance of patience and self-compassion in the journey towards emotional reintegration. Reflecting on the entire ordeal, several key insights emerged. The betrayal had been a catalyst for profound personal growth, compelling me to reassess and redefine my priorities and values. It became evident that self-care and emotional well-being were paramount, necessitating a mindful approach to future relationships and life decisions. The journey had also illuminated the strength inherent within, a resilience that had been tested but ultimately fortified through adversity. In conclusion, the dissolution of my marriage, while initially devastating, became a transformative chapter that heralded a new beginning. The journey towards healing was intricate and multifaceted, encompassing professional dedication, personal rediscovery, and the cultivation of supportive relationships. As I moved forward, the lessons learned from this period served as a foundation for a life imbued with greater awareness, resilience, and purpose. The future, though uncertain, was approached with a sense of hope and an unwavering belief in the possibility of renewal and happiness.